Hello, cutie pies! Welcome to today's episode of Apple Pie, a podcast on the relevance of mathematics in the food industry with Pau, Janine, Bless, Faye, Carla, and Von. This is Pau speaking, and to start off with today's topic, here is Janine. Go, Janine!
There are numerous challenges confronting the world today. Siyempre, hindi naman nauubos ang problema ng mundo. And out of those problems, we have chosen one related to food. Food is significant because it is one of our basic needs to survive. Siyempre, hindi tayo mabuhay without food. And there are many other reasons why we chose it, which will be covered later on. As the population increases, recently nga lang, our population surpassed the 8 billion mark and is continuously increasing. So, padami tayo ng padami. So, thus, the demand for food. Siyempre, mas maraming tao, mas malaki ang makukonsume. So, yung ikukonsume ng 8 billion na tao, yun yung hahabulin ng supply ng food. Dito napapasok ang problema. Because the amount of food we are currently receiving is insufficient to meet this demand. At that point, mathematics enters the picture to help meet these requirements. At that point, mathematics enters the picture to help meet these requirements. We'd also like to discuss some instances or examples where mathematics has been used in the food industry to boost production in order to keep up with the demand. Siyempre, yung production yung i-boost mo para mapadami yung supply to meet this demand. Pero before that, I've been focusing about food, and Pau here would tackle about the food industry.
Wow, thank you, Janine. To continue, it is important to remember that the food industry spans from pleasure to art and, as Janine discussed earlier, to the most basic human necessity. Given this, both food quality and food safety has become a major concern, hindi lang rito sa Pilipinas but a global concern. Quite a problem to tackle, no? Pero don't be overwhelmed because addressing this was especially made possible by mathematical models on food behavior through the food chain. For example, one that will be tackled deeper later in the podcast is the tremendous role of mathematical model in improving the exploration of better alternatives in multi-scale simulations for maintaining food security. Generally naman, yung mathematical models used for the food industry could be analytical, numerical, or even observational. These create vast improvement to the food industry by simplifying food system descriptions, mechanisms, and rate equations of changes in food production. Ayan. So here we have Bless and Faye naman to give us a more comprehensive discussion about the importance of mathematics in the food industry.
Okay, so before we dive deeper into the topic, maybe some of you were wondering, ano nga ba ang relevance itong pag-uusapan natin for today? So first off, we just want to highlight and maybe make this talk more interesting for you, our viewers.
Yes, when we think of mathematics kasi first thing na pumapasok sa isip natin, especially sa ating students, ay yung mga technical involvement nito sa different fields like algebra, geometry, calculus, statistics and probability, basta lahat ng madugang computations. Yan ang first thing that we think if we talk about math. Pero this time, we'll take you to the other side. Pag-usapan natin yung importance ng math sa food industry.
Siguro lahat naman tayo, at least once in our lifetime, is naka-experience na ng math equation involved with food. Siyempre, unang-una na dyan ay yung iconic na si Juan ay may 10 mansanas, nahingi si Pedro ng 2, ilan lang matitirang mansanas ni Juan.
Correct. Ito pa, para sa mga mahilig magluto or mag-bake dyan, di ba hindi naman pwedeng palaging tansya-tansyahan na lang sa measurements ng ingredients? We need to make sure na tama din yung temperature at time, lalo na yung sukat ng ingredients whenever magluluto tayo, para sakto lang yung sarap at hindi masyadong maalat o kulang sa tamis yung niluluto natin.
Yes, true. And as we progress in our higher years, syempre, mas mahirap ang mga problems involving mathematics. And along with that, magiging mas practical ang mga problems na sinsolve natin. In the food industry, meron tayong mga transportation problems with regards sa logistics ng mga pagkain natin. There are also various equations na ginagamit for the pricing ng mga foods, wherein kinoconsider natin yung customer and yung demand along with the supply. Lastly, gumagamit din tayo ng mga models for the analysis of food security, which is what this talk will all be about.
Yes, tama ka dyan, Bless. Sa food industry kasi sobrang wide ng scope ng mathematics dito. Isama na natin yung labor cost, sales, inventory, and production cost ng restaurants, manufacturers, factories, especially sa nutritionist. We also need to consider all the nutritional data on fresh and packaged foods. And this way, yung mangluluto ng food ay makakapag-provide na ng appropriate balanced meals, including the nutritional calculations para sa mga consumers.
So, one of the reasons why we chose this topic is because of how relevant itong topic na to sa current situation natin. Alam naman nating lahat na the past years is specifically difficult for all of us because of the COVID-19. Although thankfully, we're at the end of the situation already. But, syempre, the situation definitely made an impact on food security across the globe. Along with the situation, there's also the climatic change and the economic change that has been going on as we progress. And that definitely made an indirect and direct impact on how an individual accesses their daily foodstuffs.
Ang dami na ngang tao sa buong mundo. Maabot na tayo ng mga 8 billion. Sa sobrang dami na natin, hindi na talaga may iwasan yung mas mataas na yung demand kaysa supply. Nagkakaroon na rin tayo ng crisis sa food security. Nakaka-apekto din sa crisis yung economics ng bansa. Tulad ng nangyari sa Russia, naumpisa na nila yung import substitution. So ano nga ba ito? Yung import substitution ay ina-encourage ang production sa domestic market. Kumbaga, wala mo ng importasyon na magaganap galing sa ibang bansa. Isa sa kriteriya ng polisiya ng Russia ay at least 80% ng produkto ay nanggagaling sa domestic sector. Pero ang tanong ay totoo nga ba na masusolusyonan ay nanggagaling dito? Hindi ba need natin ng tulong ng ibang bansa? Dito ay gumamit na sila ng mathematical tool para ma-predict nila kung effective ba ito. Mathematical tool o fuzzy logic ang gamit nila. Fuzzy logic toolbox ng MATLAB ay isang computer application na nagsasolve ng mga ganitong bagay. Inputs, outputs, ang functional expression na sinosolve dito. May annual production, consumption, at importation ng pagkain ang ginamit sa paggawa ng table. Gamit ang mga data, nalaman nila ang tatlong indicators ng food security. Una ay ang high security class, ibig sabihin ay wala masyadong threats. Pwede itong mapigilan ng regulatory market processes. Pangalawa ay ang class of allowable level of security. May konting threats na dito. May limits of resources na. Panghuli ay ang class of critical level of security. May full excess na ng allowable level of security. Matindi na ang crisis dito. So, meron pa ba kayang example na ma-share dyan, guys?
So, before makarating sa ating mga consumers ang isang food product, tumadaan muna to sa isang food supply chain network na binubuo ng activities like production, processing, storage, and distribution. Ang daming pinagdaanan ng pagkain bago makarating sa atin. Since ang food supply chain ay maiko-consider na isang network kung saan interconnected ang production, storage, distributor at consumers, yung mga nangyayari sa isang part ng network ay makakaapekto sa iba pang parte nito. Ano sa tingin niyo yung examples of disruptions na pwedeng mangyari?
Pwedeng makaapekto yung mga di natin na-expect na mangyari tulad ng bagyo at yung COVID-19. Halimbawa, nasira bigla yung mga palayan. Madi-disrupt na rin dito yung food chain kasi hindi agad makakarating yung mga palay. Madi-disrupt din yung production ng mga tinapay, bigas at iba pa. Isa pa yung COVID-19 kasi 'di ba nung nag-lockdown noon, limitado yung mga mabibilhan kasi sarado yung mga establishments.
Yes, exactly. Siguro yung pandemic ay isa sa best example of a disruption sa food supply network. Dahil sa quarantine protocols na kinailangang i-impose, nalimitahan talaga yung kilos ng mga tao. Apektado yung lahat ng parte ng network. Yung workforce sa manufacturing processes, mga retailers na nagbebenta, and even tayong mga consumers. Nag-iba yung ways and means of consumption natin dahil bawal lumabas noong lockdown period. Diyan nauso talaga yung mga food deliveries at nagkaroon ng limited capacity para lumabas at bumili ng groceries. Dahil nga sa possibilities of disruptions sa isang food supply chain, isa sa mga aims ng researchers is to design a model na resilient from disruptions.
Oo, agree ako dyan. Kahit di naman eksaktong masolusyonan yung disruption gamit yung model, kaya naman itong mal-predict yung pwedeng mangyari in the future. At least may idea na kung ano yung posibleng gawin kapag na-disrupt yung food chain.
Yes, isa sa mga aims ng mga researchers is to come up with solutions to mitigate these disruptions. One way of doing so is by coming up with mathematical models na kayang mag-predict ng outcomes to a certain extent by considering the disruptions. Sa paper ni Zara and colleagues, nag-formulate sila ng mathematical model para sa isang food supply chain network na both sustainable at resilient from disruptions. Yung main objective ng model na to is to minimize supply chain costs while considering sustainable objectives. Ano nga ba yung supply chain costs? Ito yung mga expenses in the production, storage, transportation, and distribution stages ng isang produkto. Usually, nagre-reflect to sa retail price ng food products na binibili natin.
Dagdag pa dito ay yung mas mababay percentage ng supply chain cost ng isang kumpanya. Maganda yung performance pag mababa yung percentage. Ibig sabihin din kasi nito ay tama yung transportation service, magaling yung sales management, efficient yung workflow at iba pa.
Yes, exactly. Yung end goal ng mathematical model is to minimize the cost. Maging mas mababa yung expenses sa paggawa at pag-transport ng isang produkto. Since mas mababa yung expenses, possible na gawing mas mababa yung selling price ng product sa mga consumer like us. Kino-consider sa mathematical model na dapat ang food supply chain ay resilient from disruptions. Resiliency is a concept kung saan may ability ang isang supply chain to return to pre-disruptive status or to bounce back quickly to normal operations kapag may disruptions like calamities. Kapag resilient ang isang system, mas nakakayanan nito na makabalik sa normal operations once na may unexpected events na nakaapekto sa operations nito. Another objective ng model is to maximize sustainable objectives. Ang sustainability ay isang concept kung saan nami-minimize ang pagkaubos ng natural resources and damage sa environment sa paggawa ng isang produkto. Siyempre, one way or another, nakaka-contribute talaga ang food supply chain sa environmental degradation, such as through pollutions and carbon emissions na nagpapalala ng climate change. Kaya as much as possible talaga, kailangang i-consider ang objective na to para may magamit pa ng mga resources ang future generations. Sa paggawa ng mathematical model, nag-formulate ng various equations ang researchers na nagkakalculate ng total cost of supply chain as well as environmental and social scores ng systems. Looking at the equations used for calculations, madami akong nakikitang summation operators na presumably nag-add up ng different variables like cost of raw materials, cost of transporting product, and demand of product. Merong equations for total cost, social score, and environmental score under two scenarios, normal scenario and disruption scenario. Sa normal scenario, kinakalculate ang total cost at environmental and social scores before a disruption happens. Sa disruption scenario, kinakalculate yung mga values na to assuming na may disruption event na nakakaapekto sa supply chain. Through this, mako-quantify ang differences for the two scenarios since available ang data for comparison. Gumagamit ang mathematical model ng tinatawag na robust scenario-based stochastic programming. Basically, ang purpose nito is to deal with uncertainties and probabilities in the parameters. Since in real life, di ba, ang disruption events ay walang kasiguraduhan kung anong form or kung kailan to mangyayari. Since mayroong multiple objectives ang mathematical model na to, gumamit din ang mga researcher ng epsilon constraint method. Basically, ino-optimize ang isang objective while kino-consider yung ibang objectives as a constraint. For example, sa pag-optimize ng function for total cost ng supply chain, magiging constraint ang functions for environmental and social score. Dahil dito, nalilimit kung ano ang lowest possible cost na pwedeng ma-achieve. Mayroong trade-off, kumbaga. To test the performance and feasibility of the model, Nag-run ng calculations ang mga researchers using numerical example. Gumamit sila ng solver application to run calculations for the sample data. Ayun, from the results, nakita nila na kung gustong i-minimize ang total cost, masasacrifice talaga ang environmental and social score ng supply chain. Which makes sense in real life, diba? Kung patuloy na mag-harvest ng natural resources ang mga companies for profit without regards for the environment, posible talaga. Nakita din sa results ng test na while nag-i-increase ang total cost ng supply chain kapag kino-consider ang disruption scenarios and yung factors like environmental and social scores, tumataas naman ang resiliency and sustainability ng supply chain. Dito nakikita yung trade-off. Tataas ang cost ng product, pero tataas din ang sustainability and yung ability ng supply chain na makarecover agad during crisis. Nagiging investment siya kumbaga. By investing in resiliency and sustainability practices, mas nagiging adaptable ang food supply chain natin against crises like natural disasters and the pandemic. Using mathematical models like this, natutulungan ang mga companies and policymakers sa decision-making processes para mas maging efficient ang sistema. Formulating better and better models can help us in predicting real-life trends more accurately, preparing us against uncertainties and improving food security for everyone.